Okay. Then during the disciplinary investigations into the frontline staff before you were investigated, did you talk to any wardens?
I don't recall.
Okay. How about after you were walked out?
Yes.
Okay. What did you talk to other wardens about?
When I was placed on administrative leave, Ms. Vesahaya called me to tell me I was being placed on administrative leave. I mean, as you can imagine, I was shocked. I was upset. It was unprecedented, I told her. Chrissy Preston walked me out on my way home. I mean, word spreads like crazy. I got a number of calls that night from other wardens who couldn't believe it happened.
Okay, and you hadn't contacted them, is that right?
No, I hadn't contacted them at this point.
Okay, so they reached out to you because they had heard of it, is that fair to say?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so what was the subject of those meetings? Those calls?
Calls. They asked if I was okay. They said they can't believe that a warden got placed on administrative leave for an escape that they weren't even there for or part of.
Okay.
It sent a ripple effect. They also said that they were afraid that if something went wrong at their institution, they would get locked out. I mean, walked out.
Judge, I'm going to object to, this is again hearsay. I'm going to just make that objection.
And Mr. Cross, you know what my ruling has been about this. No.
Yep. Okay. But you don't know what my objections are because every time I try to make them, you interrupt me. But I think we're clear. So,
Yes.
all right. So, I guess between the lockdown and the escape itself, was there anything that stood out in your mind about you being treated differently than the other wardens?
I'm going to object to the form of the question.
Could you ask it again, please?
Sure. Was there anything that stands out in your mind between the end of the lockdown and the escape that indicates that you were treated differently than the other wardens?
You can allow. Go ahead.
Yes, I was still required to provide weekly updates to Mr. Percy.
Okay. And what were the subject of those updates?
A variety of topics, you know, what programming do you have for the inmates? How much out of cell time are the inmates getting? Do you have visits opened up yet? I can't remember them all, but it was operational questions.
And this is at the beginning of the pandemic, right?
This was, I think the pandemic was in March. So you asked me from like mid-January to April.
Okay.
So a little bit of that was before.
Now, I guess other than the meeting with or your call to Doug Percy about the inmate article, was there any other time where you felt that you weren't getting support from Doug Percy?
Yes.
Can you explain?
He is
Object to
my
relevance.
Excuse me. What was your objection?
Relevance.
I'm going to allow. Go ahead.
He's my immediate supervisor. He was, Columbia was under his purview. We had major incidents. We had a staff assault. It ended up in a hospital visit twice. And we had a staff member that was almost killed. None of those times did Mr. Percy come into the institution. to support me or Columbia. His presence was never made known there. That's unusual.
Why is that unusual?
Because when you have major incidents like that, the assistant administrator, from my 30 years, is always at the institution, at least on one of those occasions, would have made an appearance, at least come to support.
Okay, what about the escape itself? Did he ever come for that?
No,
Okay, and we're talking about the lockdown too. Did he ever come with regard to the staff assaults or the assaults on staff?
no.
Okay.
That isn't a clear answer because of the way the question came up, so I don't know what you said. No.
Fair enough. Okay, I'm just gonna re-ask that question and just say assaults on staff. So did he ever come to the institution after the assaults on the staff?
No.
Okay. Did he ever come at all during your tenure there?
I know he came at least once, I believe, at the beginning, and I don't believe it was for any specific reason. But when the times were tough and there was a lot going on, serious incidents, I did not see him there. He didn't come.
Did you ask for help and didn't get it?
I did bring up the fact that no one had visited. And that's, I think, what prompted Makta to come and visit after the third staff assault.
Okay, because I know we talked about that, there's been some testimony on that, but when do you think Magda came to the institution?
The assault happened in November of 2019, and I believe she may have came maybe couple weeks after that, a week, sometime the end of November.
And who did you complain to that no one had come to the institution?
I talked to other wardens. I can't remember if I asked Doug. I mean, I had known Doug for years, Doug Percy. Are you going to come? Are you going to make a visit?
Okay, and was it important to for you as a warden to have somebody from the administration come there?
Absolutely.
And why?
So it shows a cohesive team. So you're not out on this island. Even the staff look for it. I mean, we've had previous secretaries that would go visit a staff member in the hospital after an assault and come to the institution. There was just an absence from administration. Staff are looking for the okay that they're going to be all right. They're looking to see somebody above the warden, that it's important enough for administration to recognize that they were hurt, that there was a serious assault, that administration would come in to offer that support. You wouldn't believe how much even a presence of somebody like that makes on the staff at an institution.
And based on your warden meetings and other with the secretary and other meetings, do you believe that the other wardens were getting that kind of support?
Let's say the other male wardens at the maximum institutions did not have to go through all the steps and beg for things to be run the way they wanted to as much as I did.
I'm going to object, lacks personal knowledge.
Well, how do you know that?
I'm gonna allow her to just say that's what she felt. There's no basis for it, but that's
Well,
what she
how do you
felt.
know there's no basis for it?
If you can bring it up, go ahead, but right now,
was
all
that
we got is
discussed?
her feeling.
Sure. Based on, again, on those meetings that you had with the wardens and the secretary.
Is that correct?
It's
Well, Judge,
based
at this
on
point, I
my,
would object based on
No.
hearsay.
1 second. She's talking about meetings she had with the secretary and the wardens together. I'm gonna allow that. So, go ahead. Did you get that impression from the information discussed at meetings with the secretary, with the other wardens?
yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, I then want to bring you up in time, I guess, to the pre-disciplinary letter. Okay.
Okay.
Now, and that's the first time that you heard the term gross misconduct, that allegation of gross misconduct.
Referred to my case, yes.
Okay. Before you got that letter, had you heard of any allegations made against you at all?
Not that rose to the level of gross misconduct.
Sorry, and yeah, and let me rephrase that question, please. Had you heard of any allegations made against you with regard to the escape?
You don't mean work rule violations, you mean?
No, I mean work rule violations. Had they told you that there were any allegations against you for the regarding the escape?
No, they don't. When you're going through an investigation, they don't tell you that. I mean, from lines of question, you can see what angles and what things they're asking you, but you don't know until you get that letter that they actually believe you violated any rules.
Okay, but you were trained as an investigator at the Department of Corrections,
Yes.
and you did that job for a number of years?
Yeah, probably 20 years.
Okay. And did you understand at that time how investigations were initiated?
Yes.
Okay. And did you understand how somebody became the subject of investigation as opposed to a witness?
Yes.
Okay. And did you understand, based on your knowledge as an investigator and experience as an investigator, how investigations are run?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever experienced where there was a conclusion that was given to the investigators for them to find?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Again, based on your knowledge and experience as an investigator, were you able to determine, or did you have some idea of where the investigation was pointed?
At what point, please?
Yeah, so this is when after you became the subject and you're being interviewed, right? So thank you,
Yes.
Judge.
Well, yeah, there's two pivotal things that that made me believe it. So one of them was being the subject of an investigation,
Okay,
and the second one was being placed on administrative leave.
okay. And what about being the subject of the investigation gave you that informed you about the possible outcome?
Because I wasn't there. I didn't participate in the escape. I was at home. I had sound policy and procedure in place that should have prevented an escape. I retrained all the staff. I mean, everything was in place to prevent an escape. And
Okay,
when I saw I was a subject, I thought, okay, they're looking at me now because they feel I had some impact or something I did allowed this escape to happen.
okay. And was there anything about the questions that they were asking you during that interview while you were a subject that reinforced that concept?
Yeah, every question, probably.
Okay. And you've again participated in these investigations, and you've participated in investigation review team meetings. Is that right?
Yes.
And disciplinary review team meetings.
Yes.
Okay. So, and you have a familiarity of how those meetings are run.
Yes.
Okay, and who is able to influence the outcome of those meetings?
Yes.
Okay. And based on that knowledge and understanding, do you believe that the primary decision maker is the person who's able to influence the outcome of those
Yes.
meetings?
I'm going to object to the form of that question.
Can you ask the question again, please?
Sure. As warden at the appointing authority, were you able to direct the outcome of the disciplinary review team meetings at the institutional level?
Okay, so not with respect to her, but with respect to other people,
Right.
I'm going to object to relevance then at that point.
I'm gonna allow.
No, I could have an opinion, but I couldn't have a decision in those decisions.
Okay. Were you the highest ranking person at that meeting? Yeah.
At the
Dark?
IRT meetings or the DART meetings, yes.
Okay. So, but by influence, you mean that's because the secretary told you you recommend and he decides. Is that right?
Well, yes, that's how it went. There were many times when I didn't agree one way or the other. And I didn't agree with HR, and then the answer would come down, this is gonna be the outcome. Sometimes I would try to argue my point of view, but it came down to what the secretary wanted, even though my name went on those letters to the employees.
Okay. So, and you had that, you knew about that practice and policy when you were given the put on administrative leave, right?
I'm going to object. It assumes facts not in evidence with respect to the practice and policy.
I'm gonna allow based on the actual questioning we just had. I don't know what the practices and policies are other than what she just testified to with respect to her knowledge from investigations. Go ahead.
Yes, I know that because I sat in these meetings since I was a deputy warden back in 2012, all the way up through 2020. I sat in on these meetings. Columbia Correctional, for example, had over 300 staff investigations in 1 year, in the year 2019. So yes, many staff investigations in our IRT, DART meetings I've sat in.
Okay. So, and again, you've also had meetings with the secretary and wardens where the warden says you, or the secretary says you recommend and I decide, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you saw in that the pre-disciplinary letter that you were being charged with gross misconduct, what did that mean to you?
That meant I was done. That meant that was the final, all this leading up to the potential that I could be fired or terminated. Once, I violated rules according to them, according to the letter, but not only that, gross negligence. I kept racking what did I do that was gross negligence that rose to putting those violations up to that level, skipping progression and being able to terminate me as a warden that had sound policies in place that wasn't there when the escape happened.
Okay, so
I was floored. I'm sorry. It was unbelievable.
and did you take that information in conjunction with the statements by Carr as reported to you and by the inmate letter?
Absolutely.
Okay, because again, the charge of gross misconduct would eliminate the need for progressive discipline.
Correct.
Okay. Did you discuss this with with the other wardens after you were walked out?
Yes, Warden Gary Boughton was my representative for the times I was interviewed as a subject. And as I testified before, he was the longest standing warden. He still is. He's still there, 40 some years in. He said, yeah, they're looking for termination.
I'm going to object. That's hearsay.
Sustained.
Okay.
Sustained.
So, but based on your meeting with your representative, you understood that you may be terminated, or that's something else.
Correct. Based on everything we just went through, my whole interactions from the day the administration took office up until that point, yes.
Okay. Okay, let's if we can take a brief pause here, I think we may be able to wrap up.
Okay, so how long is this pause? Should we turn off our,
5 minutes, let's say till
everything?
10:20.
all right, is that good with you, Mr. Mullenbach?
If we could just take a 10-minute break, Judge, I would appreciate it. Maybe
Okay,
10.
let's
problem.
take till 10:25. All right, thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Put yourself and stop video.